Hello, friends, and welcome back. Today we are here to discuss Where the Body Was. We've been on a bit of a Brubaker kick lately, and I don't know. I'm loving it. It's really good stuff, all of it.
Yeah.
It's funny to see the difference, how varied that team, the different topics and subjects and stories that they just nail. So, but we'll get into all that. Everyone, if we can go through introductions, and as you introduce yourself, tell us how you would describe this book to someone who has not read it. So, Jared, if you want to start us off.
Okay. I am Jared. I am running the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and I would say that this book is a puzzle box of sorts. It's a mystery, and it also is a historical slice of life type thing. I think it's 80s, right? That early 80s or late 70s that this takes place. And
80s,
and so it's a little suburban mystery, basically.
And Varsha.
Hi, my name is Varsha. I run the YouTube channel called Reading by the Rainy Mountain. Also, we are all on a podcast called Speculative Speculations, where we talk about sci-fi stories. About this graphic novel, so I haven't been reading the Ed Brubaker stuff with the others. This is my first one, and I really enjoyed this. How I would describe it, I think slice of life is probably what comes to mind. The mystery part of it is, I'm a little iffy on that. For a book titled Where the Body Was, where we end up actually laying out the mystery or even who died. I guess the mystery was even what the mystery is, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, I think the slice of life bit fits the most in, it's over the course of a summer, right? Yeah.
And Chris.
Yeah, my name's Chris Mohan, run a YouTube channel called Chronicle of Chris. And thank you, Jared and Varsha. You give me enough time to think of how I would describe this, because if I was going first, it wasn't going to end well. So I think I've come upon that this is most like Pulp Fiction, set in the 80s. Interlocking character stories that you don't really know where it's going, as Varsha kind of rightly pointed out. You think it's going to be a murder mystery, but it's really not about that. It is about how these character arcs kind of come together and coalesce into a singular narrative towards the end, but at the start you kind of see their disparate situations, and they're all very flawed characters as they are in Pulp Fiction, etc. as well. So that's my pitch.
I think it's interesting the title of the book, that is Where the Body Was and not Where the Body Lies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably an allusion to the body being moved. It's kind of funny because you have this the map, like in the opening cover, and it actually tells you where the body was. If you look at number 9, and so that's interesting, because it's like, so part of the book is actually finding out. I guess part of the mystery is where the body is, because we know where it was. It tells us right the first thing.
Yeah.
So sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Varsha. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was saying where the body was, we find, and that was interesting to find out that the was is in reference to the fact that the body was moved, because I was sort of filling in the where the body was found in my head, and like that's where the dead body was, and then they solved a mystery about it, which we don't see anything about until the second last or third last chapter. So yeah, it was very interesting to me how little of a role the actual body plays in the course of the story. Sorry, Steve, you were saying?
Oh no, I was going to say, I think I would. Jared and I were talking before we started recording, before everyone showed up, and I think this is kind of a slice of life story. It's also has kind of the tragedy of life kind of we experience these things for a short time, and things feel like it consumes us, and then we go through our lives and we look back, and it's those events, how they change us, or we look back and we want to recapture those moments, and how as we get older we look back on those events or those people that we lose track of, or it's just one of those things about life, but it's a bit of tragedy in it too. It's just part of life, but it's still tragic. It still breaks your heart. The end of the book especially was a bit of a kind of got me at the end.
I do think it's interesting that you're right that it definitely has a different flavour than the other Brubaker Phillips reads that we've had. But I think a lot of the themes are still the same in all of their books. Like you just described there, nearly all of their books are based around characters who are coming through some sort of change or period of change in their life. And in a lot of ways, sort of a Tarantino-esque ways, a lot of them actually choose to go down a crime kind of road as some part of at least some of the characters do, and this one definitely had that as well. But I think it does represent that idea that your life can go multiple ways, some through choice, some through chance, at various stages of your life, because you obviously have different ages of characters all the way through here. The 18-year-old, the young woman, the cop who reinvents himself from his dad's death, for instance. So how does he deal with grief? He basically adopts a persona, and very convincingly to himself, and it kind of becomes almost the person that he's always wanted to be in some ways, and get a position in society, and like the lengths that he would go to protect that false identity in a lot of ways, is a lot of where the narrative sits within it. And even so, he's still a side character within the story. I think that's all. It's very interestingly constructed, because it wasn't until the body appeared at the start of one of the issues that I kind of went, "Oh, that's right. There's a dead body in this story." Like, I'd totally forgotten that was even a facet of this story. And I went, "Oh, right, okay, we're back on this, right? Okay."
Well, that's I think that's a compliment to Brubaker's exceptional character building in the beginning, that you get so invested in these characters to start with that you forget that there's actually going to be a body, and there's going to be an event and a death. It wasn't a murder, as far as we know, but that's a great point, Chris, that you suddenly get invested in this slice of life story about all these different characters, and oh yeah, then the body shows up, and then you're reminded, oh yeah, this is gonna be, we're gonna refocus on that for a little bit, but it's funny how, like Steve was saying, that something like that, a dead body and all the ramifications that comes with it, really kind of pointed all these characters into their roles and further on in life. It was the what do you call that, the key to change, the impetus for all of them moving forward and what they were going to be. And in a lot of cases, it wasn't a good one. It wasn't the greatest thing. I think it was more. In some cases, it was just the characters having expectations and going nowhere near those expectations. One of them just ended up as a Walmart greeter or whatever she was. Mm-hmm. But and so you have everybody has expectations when they're young about where they're going to be later on in life, and Brubaker was showing us that a lot of those expectations are not met. That's the semi-tragic part of it.
And to what you said about characters being consumed by what was happening during this short period of time, Steve, I think I really liked how each character story was told, where we have a much older version of them looking back at this summer. And a lot of times, I think at least the kid who was the superhero, and the one, what's her name, Karina, the one who started it all, they looked upon themselves as like these silly creatures who got up to shenanigans, and like they didn't know what they were doing, and looking down at their younger, less wiser selves. So I really like that. I like how you put it, that they were consumed by this, but then it didn't even change their overall lives very much. It was just one summer, something that happened that time.
I think it also really gave Phillips a way to use his skills, because we were able to see these older versions of themselves and contrast visually, even how they looked and represented compared to against the younger version. Like I think if you look at, isn't it Ranko, like he was the very disheveled guy, and even as he got older, he sort of got better. He was more representative of himself, even though it was much later. And in some ways, he sort of straightened himself out. Obviously, he was manipulated through that whole period, and so it wasn't all his fault necessarily. But you get to see that people ended up sensibly are just older, or like the housewife, for instance, she just kind of seen that as her last chance. That was basically the end for her, is what she felt, and couldn't get over it. And that all of the things that she felt and that we've seen kind of mattered, because we talked very briefly a couple of days ago before we had a discussion about the use of sex graphically within the thing, and whether it was necessary. And I think by the end of it, for her character arc, I do think it's sort of gratuitous, some of the poses that are put there. Like I definitely think they are, but it definitely has a purpose for her character, because it's very much tied into her humanity and her femininity, and how she sees her life and her character, and that, and become very important for her development and actually where she ended up.
Yeah. Well, to go along with that, Chris, an important point to remember, and which was a really neat storytelling vehicle that Brubaker used, was a lot of these characters are breaking the fourth wall.
Yes.
And they're talking to us, and so they're telling us their story, and so that is how she saw herself.
Yeah.
That's that explicit viewpoints, and so that's that. And so I really like that. I think it would be easy for people to overlook that and just think that Phillips wanted to draw a bunch of naked people having sex, but it was for Chris's enjoyment. But it was, no, it was a very much a point to it, and it was because of that character looking back, like you said, and breaking the fourth wall and telling us a story how they wanted it to be told.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Mm-hmm. And about the sex scenes, I think there was one interesting detail. I don't know if I was making this up, but when we were in Nina, is that the name of the woman, Lena? When she was telling us her story, like she was at the forefront of the sex scenes, and then when we switched to the cops version of the story, his body was at the forefront, which I thought was interesting. Like I didn't really enjoy that there were so many scenes like that, but I thought that was an interesting contrast, like another way to bring the character who's telling us their story to the forefront. So, and I think, and what that meant to them, I think that also was apparent through the pictures as well as the story that was being told us.
Yeah, Tony, that's
Tony, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In regard to the title, as we're talking, I wonder if where the body was, is that referring to also our characters and where they were in this time period and their location? Because a lot of it has to do with location and this road and these houses and this neighborhood and where they were at this time. It's almost like a time capsule we're looking back on.
That's actually a good illusion.
I was going to say, even how they framed the very start of the story of how the house passed through people's hands, and that's who currently held it. This loser house, as they sort of put it, but it wasn't always that. It was a respectable family passed through generations, and then for this strict moment in time, that's where we were, and that's what whose house the hands were at, and who was living there.
Yeah, I love how he even gives us clues to their characters. Even before the story starts, you had the cast of characters right at the beginning.
That's right.
You can see very clearly, and this is Phillips' mastery of artwork with people. I think he does people just about better than anybody. And so you have their attitude right there in the portraits of the cast of characters. You can just tell a lot about these people just by looking at those pictures. But even the little names that they're giving are a clue. It's like the juvenile delinquent and the teenage runaway. You can kind of tell just by where they're placed that they're a little bit connected. They're going to be a little bit connected in this story. And then you have the next guy, the Palmer Sneed, man with a badge. Notice how it does not say cop, you know, and that's a little, just a little hint that there's something a little different about. He's described as man with a badge, not cop, detective, policeman, whatever. And so there's a little clues there, you know, neglected wife, hard-working psychiatrist. It's like, you know, there's all these little stuff in there that you know, aka the roller derby kid. You know, that's like she got the little mask on. That's a superhero name in quotes, you know. And it's just really cool how they put these little clues in there just to give you stuff if you're looking hard enough to even before the story is starting.
And it's even how they are. He gives them the stereotype of the thing that they see. You know, if you were looking at the case files for this in the cop station, and they had, you know, the pictures up of everybody, the things that we have underneath them are almost certainly what they would have handwritten in pen on top of the Polaroids to say, you know, he's a hardworking psychiatrist. But actually, the story then goes on to explore actually behind the stereotype, or behind what you see them, the story of who these people are, like the hardworking psychiatrist. The only one that's given, I would say, in a lot of cases, given kind of worth in that front section, the hardworking psychiatrist, is the guy who planned and plotted and murdered and did all of that kind of stuff. So actually, as it came out, his place in society and his kind of stereotypical place within this, what you think of the story at the start, actually totally flipped its head by the end.
Yeah. But even in the picture, though, he's kind of glaring at you, you know? And it's like, okay. And then, like, in his wife, the neglected wife, she's got this sultry look, you know, and it's just really, really cool.
She's giving Jared the eye from page one.
Just give me the eye, yeah.
So I don't think, like, I think Chris, I think you mentioned, like, no one does characters like this team does. Who is everyone's, who, I won't say favorite character, but which character was most interesting to everyone? Because I think Palmer, for me, is the most interesting. I think for him to have a kind of be like it's a normal everyday person, but he finds a badge, he takes it off his dead father, and uses it, and the way people treat him differently just because he has a badge, and he finds some kind of power in that and some kind of control when he really has no control, you know, of his own life. But he finds a way to control other people just by having a badge, and of course it all falls apart on him. But I think he's the most interesting character for me. But I don't know, what do you all think?
I think for me too, Palmer was the one. Because I was just like, I don't know, lying on the couch and reading this comic, right? And then I sat up in my seat when we turned the page, and I think there was this chapter titled "But the Thing Is" or something, in which the barkeep at the place that Palmer works says, you know, he's not a cop. He works here. He has a shift in the morning every day, and that's what drew me in. And so I really wanted to know what his deal was. Um, Other than that, maybe the kid, Lila, she had me. I think for her, the interest came when I saw her helping the homeless veteran. Because until then, she was just a silly kid up to silly shenanigans and like, what are you hoping to achieve, poor kid? But then she's helping out this homeless guy, and she's bringing him sandwiches, and he's listening to her when she tells him not to. What's the word I'm looking for? Uh, Clutter? No. Um, Create a mess. And yeah, so both of them for me.
Hmm. My favorite character.
Go ahead.
I think Palmer is the most interesting one, and I think he just because he's coming off and he's pulling off this this scam of a sorts, and he's realizing he has power through that scam that he never had in life before, and it was just a great characterization, great backstory, and it's something that just seems in a lot of these characters, they all seem like it could have happened. Like they seem so realistic, and it seemed like I feel like I've known somebody like that, you know, and but especially when you see the fear in his eyes when he thinks that this private detective's knocking on his door, and he's like, "Oh shit, the gig is up," and and then of course when further stuff happens, boom, he's out of there, and there's only so far the protection of this badge will take him, and that seems to be the story of his life, and it all ties in beautifully. I like it.
Yeah, I think like Palmer. Most of the characters have an angle that makes them all interesting. I think the one that I really liked was Tommy, in a lot of ways, because he is completely and utterly pathetic. Like in a lot of ways, he just is not. He just doesn't know anything about life or about people or anything. But he's trying to.
I know that
trying
guy
to make
too.
a life for himself. I definitely know that guy. But even the fact that he only really figures anything out about life 35 years later. Like that's at the first point in his life that he goes, actually, I understand something now. And as a male, I sort of get that in increasing years that at a certain point that you only really kind of the lessons of life that you thought you knew, you don't know shit. 20s, 30s, 40s, you start to get some sort of insight as you watch other people. I think that's what it is. You kind of experience it through other people and you go, actually, that's what that means. And I could see a lot of that in Tommy, even though at the heart of it, he's just like useless. He just kind of goes along and does the very stereotypical thing of just he wants the girl. You know what I mean? And he'd kind of do anything to kind of possess her in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. He's thinking with his second head. That's true.
Yep.
And I thought it was really deep that the thing that gave him the insight that he was missing into life was when he couldn't help his wife through her pain. Mm. And the wife is not Karina, right? It's someone else.
That's right.
Right.
Which again goes back to what Steve was saying earlier about like the summer being all consuming. But then they moved on. He had a different wife, and his realizations about the insights about life are happening over someone else. So
I think the interesting thing about Palmer specifically is he does adopt this false persona as a cop and does use it. But I was asking myself whether he really abused it. Like, he didn't really go out of his way to become demonstrative about it. He kind of used it in certain situations for control and for an ego boost. But at the same time, he was very aware himself that he wasn't that person, if you know what I mean. Because I think people who tend to take on those lives or be con artists or otherwise wholly believe it. Then as soon as they got the badge, they are that person and they become corrupted by it in some ways. Whereas him, I think it was sort of wish fulfillment in some ways. It was like, well, he's seen it as a second choice. And even when he died, as said in the book, he was just kind of like the sheriff of the trailer park. It wasn't as if he'd really moved to some high station in life, but he was sort of using it as a control. And the kids saying reasons that they didn't like him was that they wouldn't allow us to drink or anything. Wasn't it something like that? I did chuckle at that bit quite a lot, and I was like, okay, that's again sort of alluding to Tommy, that character, that young kid version, what they think is important in life and who they think is it compared to somebody older enough. I thought it was really, really interesting kind of contrast and look at that.
I think to your point, I think we can see ourselves in all these characters in some way, right? I think they're all relatable in some way. And like you said, Palmer, he used it to kind of, I don't know, did he use it for good?
Sort of.
He used it for what he thought was good.
Mm. And when the barkeep tells us what bugged him was people being asses, right? So that's what he was trying to prevent, apparently, which arguably is a misuse of power, real or perceived. but um, but yeah, he never did bad things with it, I think.
Yeah, he was almost like a bit vigilante. Like the way he's framed and introduced to the start as the cop is that he actually has done a good thing for the neighborhood by getting rid of the kid, who turns out wasn't all that bad. He was just a bit of a deadbeat, in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Sorry, Jared, to steal the pun. But he's a bit of a deadbeat guy, but again, young male. But he wasn't bad. But at the start of the story, we feel he's no good, because that's the way he's sort of presented to us, and we feel like he has done some sort of good. But he's an interesting character for sure.
Mm. And there was an interesting parallel there, I guess. His vigilantism with the vigilantism of the kid, Lila. I mean, like, she did a lot less than he did, or maybe not. I think they both gave themselves a power and they used it in whatever way they saw fit. So that also was interesting, I guess, the parallels between those two. Both were lonely kids who wanted to feel important.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, and to emphasize Chris's point about Tommy, it was funny because he's breaking the fourth wall. He's telling us part of the story, and then Karina comes in and says, "All right, enough of you. Can I tell my side of the story now?" Just like totally cutting him off, which was totally in character with how they acted, in the actual events of the story. And I love how they did that.
Really clever.
Yeah.
I think of all of the ones we've read so far, I don't know if I'd say it's the best, but I think it's the one that I could most easily recommend to people as a quick read, for something to get into Brubaker and Phillips. I think so, like something to feel it's obviously a lot longer. I think it's ultimately deeper, richer in a lot of ways, but I think this one is something you can give to anybody and just kind of say, like, what do you think of this story? Because it has a very cinematic or movie style story to it in a lot of ways that I think a lot of people will be able to follow. And like I say, I just think everybody will identify with most of the characters in some way. You'll be able to see,
right,
without them being kind of cardboard cutout. Like, I think if you were to say that everybody can identify, it means that they're too stereotypical. No, I think there's depth to them, and he gives everybody their place to it. Like, even Karina, he alludes to the fact that you're judging me now, but I'll have my say later, and again, I recognize that person as well. The person says, I want to live my life. Now I recognize that might be a good mate for me 10 years down the line. Poor Tommy.
and they all had one or two very subtle aspects that gave them depth, right? Nothing was overdone, like with Tommy, the fact that he loved Karina, that like she was sort of saving Tommy for when she was ready for a better relationship and so on. I guess even the kid Lila, she has brothers who I guess tease her or whatever, she needs to break out of her skin. And even the veteran, they all had something that helped, I guess this is what you're saying, that connect or relate to them in some way and make more of them than strictly was just on the page.
Yeah.
Even even a psychiatrist. I love how he says, he's talking to us and he says, there was no emotion involved in my decision. And on that point, I believe I'm alone in this story. Where I just thought it was a great line from his point. It was just like, what was he thinking, when he set all this up? But he ended up going to prison for it.
Yeah, he's saying he didn't have any emotion in it, but I think he's the only person that doesn't. He's the only character in the story that doesn't reflect on their role within the story. Karina reflects on her role. Tommy reflects on their role. Ranko reflects. They all reflect as how they're different people now, or that they are, something happened to them, or it was a time of life. Whereas he was very much, no, I did what I believed at the time was the right thing
Yeah.
to do, and the rest of them sort of don't. They kind of make excuses for their behavior at that stage.
Right. Yeah.
So is this common in Brubaker and Phillips' work, where I think one significant part of the story we never find out, and I honestly don't care. Like, why did the doctor want to kill his wife? um, that's not told us, and I think the other question I have is, there are these people breaking the fourth wall and telling us their story in first person, but who told us? Who put it all together? Because that also feels like a conversation with the readers, that when the house is introduced and so on. So whoever this person is said nobody ever found out what the doctor had in mind when he killed his wife, which is also very interesting. And to your earlier point, Chris, about that's right, this story is about a body too. It's again something that I'm like, yeah, that is a mystery, but I don't care about not knowing the answer.
The poor private detective gets short shrift within the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sort of
Yes.
met a humorous end, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
He was a peeping Tom, essentially, and he died for it.
Was he up there? Was he on the roof to peep, or was he there trying to find Karina?
I think a bit of both. He didn't necessarily have to climb up scaffolding, stick his head in the window and go, "Hey guys, I know you're in the middle of something there, but you need to get home."
What do you say? Oh wow! And then he falls.
Don't want to interrupt you, but just when you're finished, give me a shout.
Yeah. He even imagines her running away with him
Oh,
for
that's
one
right.
for one panel.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh god. Yeah, given his character slightly more depth, even though it wasn't needed.
I think in a few other Brubaker books that we've read, I think they do talk directly to us, right? Some of the characters, they do address us, like in
Kill or Be Killed, right?
Kill or Be Killed.
Yeah. That one they did. I'm not sure about
See,
the
the
fade out.
storytelling thing is always internal monologue for a large part, even with speech bubbles. A lot of it is like a lot of the fade out was his thoughts. Like he wasn't verbalizing it really. He was thinking it. How the characters, how his relationships with his partners, etc. All wasn't the face of it and what it was like underneath, etc. So
Yeah, but this one was very direct, like facing the camera.
yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. And another thing about going back to Phillips' artwork, this is like a different style
Yeah.
than we've seen, and he seems to be able to change his style with each project to fit that project so well. And at first glance, this seems almost simpler style at first. But like you were pointing out, when you see that age difference from the characters when they're older and younger, and it's not just they colored their hair gray or something like that. No, there's actual artwork that shows, even if this was in black and white, you would see the difference in their ages, and that's so expertly done.
Yeah.
And I just remember reading the fade out, and the style in the fade out was that almost black and white Hollywood style, slick Hollywood style from that time, and he pulled off so beautifully. And I just can't say enough about his artwork. He really nails the setting and the tone and feel of the story so well.
And a shout out for the colouring as well, because it has that sepia tone the whole way through.
Yeah.
You know, they're giving it that nostalgic feel and that kind of summer feel that there is that runs the way through. You know exactly how we're to view the story and the time period that we're doing because of it. And even then, jumping more forward, he has the more lifelike colours when they're in the present, you know, and talking back and doing it. And like, I love the character of Lila for that because she is this adventurous, observant, kind of almost thrill-seeking of adventure kid with the mask and all that kind of stuff. And she grows up to be a normal, run-of-the-mill kind of mum character, you know, very straight-laced, you know, dresses well, kind of thing. That's gone out of her.
Still rollerblades.
Still rollerblades. That's important. Yep. Still rollerblades. But it's almost as if she's saying like the rollerblade is her showing that she still has some spunk left. You know, as if that's her only defining characteristic she's left that is recognizable from her youth. And again, great characterization through that to give you an insight into both who she was and who she becomes.
Yeah. The color is Jacob Phillips, his son.
Yeah.
Sean Phillips, his son. Yeah.
There was another thing that I've noticed in Brubaker's work is that there's people in closets a lot. Because there's one in Kill or Be Killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we'll get without giving away spoilers. There's someone in the closet. So I'll say, I believe there's one in The Fade Out, right? There's a person in the closet, or at least hidden away that witnesses something.
There's a lot of men metaphorically in the closet in The Fade Out.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So everyone out there, do not hide in closets. It's a bad idea.
Well,
yeah, it is.
It definitely didn't end well in this story. Jesus. Yeah. Really enjoyable read. No doubt about it. And we're getting this really nice collection because these are quite new of these in hardcover. I'm really enjoying between this and the Night Shift as well. This. Yeah.
For the graphic scenes, I think we talked about this a little bit last night, and I'll have to be careful with the way I ask this question, but it didn't seem to me like it was meant to titillate. I think it was more about the characters and their experiences. It wasn't. It didn't feel gratuitous. Well, I guess in some way it did. I'm not sure how to word this. It didn't seem. I don't know. I don't want to say unnecessary. I'm stumbling, but I hope all of you understand where. But
yeah.
It didn't seem pornographic, or
right. It was explicit without being something specifically meant to be pornographic or sexy. You know what I mean? It was the neighbor peeking in the window and not seeing it. That doesn't compare to looking up porn online. And it's a different viewpoint, a different feel. So that's like we were saying earlier, it's also how she is looking back at it, and he is looking back at it as well.
Mm-hmm.
There was obviously a set of pretty graphic scenes in The Fade Out, and in that case it was seedy because the world was seedy, if you know what I mean. The characters, the desperation of those women, it was using it to illustrate in that fact, and it was titillating and gratuitous in some ways in that, but that was the world. Like you say, in this one, looking back through it, it is very much how she wants to see herself, as that very voluptuous, very much, in ecstasy and pleasure and that kind of stuff. It's always about her facial reactions. It's not about the man very much. It's about embracing. It's about all of that kind of stuff. So, like, it is gratuitous, but again, that's the way, as you quite rightly said, Jared, that's the way that she wants to see herself. That's where she felt alive in a lot of stuff, which is what she says kind of towards the end, to say, like, I never felt as alive as I did during that period. And it wasn't when she was walking around the house washing the dishes. It was when she was in this embrace with Palmer.
Yeah. Yeah. And for most of the book, up until she got older, she's the happiest character in the book.
Yeah.
Because she's really, that was her high life. That was the height of her,
And the height of his, actually, as it turned out as well, like he couldn't get over the fact that he got there via a lie, and so had to just kind of break it up. He sort of had shame about that because he sort of tarnished it with a lie. But actually, even though she knew it was a lie, she still would have embraced that, if you know what I mean, if he'd have given it a chance.
Yeah, I think she mentioned she hated him, but she missed him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Another thing is, I think it's interesting the time period that was in. I think it's because with Palmer disappearing and kind of becoming someone else when everything crumbled, you can't really do that now in stories that are based in this current time period, because it's harder to just disappear and restart and just become someone else. But it's now with technology, you can't really do that anymore.
Yeah. The electronic trail is a lot harder to erase than the old life.
You thought about this, Steve? It sounds like.
Well, I read it. Well, we've been wanting to discuss this for a while, so I read it probably about a month ago plus, and then I reread it this morning, or a little right before we started recording, just to kind of refresh. But yeah, it struck me as back in the 80s. That's kind of the last time period that you could really do that.
That's right.
Without someone like Googling your name and finding a random picture somewhere.
Yeah. But Facebook, you could literally have walked to the next town, drive far enough, change your name, and start again in a lot of ways. You know, open up a new checking account as it would have been back then, and you know.
I'm gonna dye my hair and disappear one of these days.
Yeah, Varsha has no idea what we're talking about. She's considerably younger than us, and is like, "What the hell's a checking account?" You know.
I know what a checking account is, but what is? Oh, I was trying to find a joke about something else that you said, but I can't remember what. Okay, never mind.
And I do like that they don't. I think a lot of the stories would have made Karina and Tommy get back together later in life. I love that didn't happen. That they tried, they can never quite find that magic again with them. They couldn't. Their time passed. They couldn't rekindle it. I like that they gave it a shot, but it was never really the same.
I wonder if Karina makes the idea that she wanted to live her life, and Tommy was a later like boyfriend, etc. But she did use his stability, and if she had have decided to have a more normal life with him then, and not go, you know, she might have found happiness within that stage. That idea that you put things off for a better time in your life may or may not happen. Like, I suppose that's the fallacy of youth, isn't it? Is that all things are possible, and you know you have control over your destiny in a lot of cases when you're young. That I think that you think that's how life is, but often circumstances and things happen that mean that you're not really in charge of every decision in your life. Things just happen at various stages, and you need to deal with them or otherwise. So I think, as in many of the other Brubaker Phillips books, there is that idea of you can only really control the moment and do the best that you can in the moment without trying to worry about tomorrow, what's going to happen.
And I like that the older version of Karina also acknowledges this about herself, that she may have made the wrong decision, but that's what she felt at the time, and that's what she went with. So
yeah, and who doesn't look back in life and say, "What if I decided that instead?" Or what if I did that? You know, and that's what all these characters are doing in some way or another in this, and that's it was like you were saying earlier, Chris. It was a very relatable book, I think, for a lot of people.
I did like at the end when there's but wait, who killed the private eye? Because you're so wrapped up in all these other characters.
Again, you forgot about it. You didn't care at the end of the story. It was like, oh, by the way, just in case you reread this a second time, you go, but what actually happened that we're going to tell you now? And they even do the thing of last chance. It's going to be revealed over the page. Have your guess now as to what happened.
Yeah, and he goes down a list of all the different characters, and like this one's like, I don't know, and this one's, all
the people that it could have been.
Maybe he got killed by somebody. We don't know who killed him. Some of them still think somebody killed the guy, and it's that was very amusing, brilliant stuff.
Yeah. I like how well Palmer as a cop was sold in the book, because even after it was revealed to us that he's not really a cop, when he was dragging the guy away, I was like, what are you doing? You're a cop. Why are you destroying evidence? But then you have to like stop and think for a second that he's not a cop.
Nope. He's just an idiot.
Yeah. That tracks with the rest of his behavior.
Yeah.
And I love that it was like this mundane, this really silly. I don't say silly because he died, but who would have ever guessed that he'd fall off a roof and hit his head? And it was also a little sad that his body was there for 2 hours before anybody found him.
Yeah, yeah.
And
freaking suburbs.
About the private investigator. Even he got a bit of a backstory of sorts, in that we are told that because he's a private investigator, it's like he's living life from a distance, that he's experiencing life through other people, not living his own, which also was very poignant, I guess, for this character. Someone we know nothing about other than that he's a private investigator. That depth there, I think, was really cool.
Yeah, he threw in a lot of good stuff like that for all the characters.
And I was a PI for many years ago. I was a PI for a little bit, but it is 99% boring, and it is 1% kind of exciting. So,
tell us about the 1%. We've just got an hour left to go on the podcast, everybody.
we could talk about this sometime. But but most of the time, you're bored out of your mind, just waiting for something to happen.
I didn't think that was actually a real career anybody had. I thought that was only invented for.
It's a thing. Yeah.
I'm hearing you about the 99% boring, but all my brain's doing is, whoa, you were a private investigator? What?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. I went to.
You just became 50% more sexy, Steve. I'm telling you. Right?
We'll talk after we record here.
What I have learned is that I'm going to tell people the best part about it was he's not even a private eye anymore. He used to be, and like, who's going to fact check that? He's just used in the 80s. I was a private eye, and there's no way of tracking it. Genius.
And not only did you become more cool, I became more cool by association. I know someone who used to be a private investigator.
And anybody who's read this comic now goes, when he says private investigator, he means peep and tongue.
I mean,
Professionally,
yeah.
It's all across the board.
Oh, God. That was a diversion.
So yeah, I love this. I love this book. It is one that you can reread over and over again. And I think if we wanted to, we could probably spend an hour on each character, just breaking each one down if we really wanted to.
Big fan.
Yeah. Once again, these guys knock it out of the park.
They've any duds? They don't have any duds, do they?
Not really. We I know there are a couple complaints here and there with Kill or Be Killed, but overall the package, which is great.
Kill or Be Killed is still very good.
It's very good. It was good.
I think what made this one great is that it's really tight. It doesn't meander too long. It's very. There's really nothing wasted really in the whole book. Yeah. All of it has significance.
Yeah, absolutely. In the best tradition of a short story, every word counts in here. Every picture counts.
I don't know how they're not more more people don't talk about them, and when they talk about just really great writers and artists and teams, they're, I mean, can't say enough good things about them.
It's part of that barrier that exists between genres. It's the same. We talk obviously about science fiction books, but there's a lot of people that walk into a bookstore and go, "Well, that section's not for me," even though there's a multitude of different stories contained within that umbrella. And same for graphic novels and comic storytelling. Like, a lot of people go, "Oh, that's for teenagers,"
Yeah.
and that's
Well,
it. That's all the value it has.
Yeah, when I was working in the comic shop, these were when issues were coming out from these guys, that was what everybody talked about that week, bar none. These guys were the high bar. These guys were it. Everything else, you might get the event of the week or whatever from the superhero stuff and whatever. It might get some play or whatever, and and every once in a while you get something a little special from Alan Moore or Neil Gaiman or something. And but consistently, because these guys are very consistent too. Then it's not just that they're really great at what they do; they're also very prolific. And so whenever a new issue came out from these guys, that was what was talked about. And so in that little microcosm of the universe, it's these guys are they are the ones, but the regular public doesn't know.
I'm also surprised the work hasn't been adapted.
Yeah.
Because it seems very, I don't want to be straightforward, but it sort of is all there already. The style's there, the story's there, everything's there for.
There was a lot of talk of Criminal being adapted. Brubaker does have ties with Hollywood.
Okay.
And he actually is a writer on some movies that were never made it, under budgeted, whatever the case may be. So there was definitely interest. It just never, for something to get off the ground in Hollywood, it's so hard.
And it's one of those. If they had one hit, it would be a scramble then to get the rest of the stuff. Like, it's the way Hollywood works.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
I think something like the. I'm sorry, Varsha. Go ahead.
Oh, I was asking if this was reprinted in 2023 or if it was published in 2023. Because I saw the copyright.
I think this is new. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is new. Yeah.
I think something like the Fade Out would be a great 10-episode series.
Amazing.
Like a
It'd be so amazing. Yeah, if it's done right. Yeah.
Even Kill or Be Killed could be. I think that might be a little too much for maybe a Netflix or an HBO, but. Lots of
the ones we've done, the Fade Out would be an Apple TV show straight off the bat.
Yeah, or HBO or whatever.
Yeah, HBO. So somebody did a high budget TV show. You could spend as much money as you wanted on it to make it look great, and it would pay off for you. HBO, it's got the sex scene in it, so it's real good.
I mean, if HBO did Perry Mason, the Fade Out would be just right up that alley.
You could even get Matthew Rhys, isn't it? You could get him to star in it as well. You could do a decent Charlie.
Sure, I could see that. Yeah.
You do pretty much anything with Matthew Rhys, right?
Yeah.
Talented guy.
Yeah. So anything else? Anything else for Where the Body Was?
No. Good spot, Steve, because we were going to pass it by. I think it hadn't come on our radars until you went, I was just on Amazon. They have a new release site. We missed it.
Amazon is a bad place, especially for these. I'll have to decide we'll also be doing Swamp Thing starting in June. So
exciting.
Just got my package today. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, nice. That was quick. Yeah.
Very quick. Yeah.
Nice. You just ordered it yesterday, didn't you?
That's right.
Wow.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon, yeah.
Yeah, Amazon's quite familiar with my front porch. Unfortunately.
What did Jared order today? Yeah.
Sometimes that's how it is, yep.
They're at my house too, but it's fine.
Well, cool. So until next time, Jared, where can people find you?
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and also on the Speculative Speculations podcast, where you can find the rest of us as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and Chris.
Yeah, you can find me in the Chronicle of Chris, Speculative Speculations, or on the Page Tune forums.
And Varsha.
You can find me on the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, on Speculative Speculations as well, and I haunt the Patreon forums all the time.
Yes, you can find me in the same places, Speculative Speculations, all the Page Chewing podcasts, Film Chewing, the Page Chewing forums, the Page Chewing blog. Jared also has articles there, so come and check them out. And we will talk to everyone very, very soon.
Cheers.